been pretty fortunate in my adult life through hard work, determination, and ingenuity to achieve things that many people have not. When I was growing up, I lived in abject poverty. We moved from apartment to apartment. My mother and stepfather smoked the reefer, so the impetus on being reliable and responsible never was ingrained into me. I had to learn that myself. And it was mostly me, through self-determination, deciding at a young age, I'm thinking probably 10 or 11, after living through hard days and weeks of being hungry, that I was never going to live like this. So I've always stood apart from my family and made it my goal to be able to do what I wanted when I wanted and afford the things that I would need to do those things. So throughout the year, if I need something, I just go get it. My wife really never asked me what I want for Christmas, because throughout the year, I acquire anything that I need. And I don't really need material things to make me happy. My life is more utilitarian, where the things that I require allow me to do things like equipment, tools. My life revolves around building, manufacturing, and doing it myself. I can't see paying somebody to do something that I know that I can do myself way better than they can, even experts. Because before I take on a project, I learn everything about what I'm going to be doing. Case in point, when I redid my bathroom, I had done some tile before, but never to the level that I did on this bathroom. That's the master bathroom in my house. Schluter Systems is a system that all-in-one waterproofs the floor and gives it the ability to not have to use backer board, because it has an underlayment that moves. Now on the surface, you look at it and you think, oh, this is pretty easy. Yeah, it is pretty easy. It was easy to do as far as using brain power, but it was tedious because there's certain steps that you have to do in order to make sure that it will last forever. And I'm not too keen on paying somebody that says they know how to do something, and then when they go to do it, you have to sit back and just take it. Or when they do it, they kind of do it their way, and it's not the prescribed way that experts agree on, like Schluter Systems. And I don't believe in paying somebody to do something half-assed. So I would just take the time, learn how to do it myself. I came somewhat of an expert in laying tile using Schluter Systems. I watched well over 100 of their videos, and people are gonna say, oh, you watch videos, you know, woo. There's a term called autodidact, which is self-taught. That's describes me. I got D's and F's in my entire reign of school, from first grade all the way up to 12th grade. Graduated, and school just doesn't suit me. I can't just sit in a school and have somebody preach to me about a topic and learn it. I have to physically research it myself, do it, and learn it. If I watch somebody do something, I have the ability to just mimic that. The only thing that I've had problems with respect to that is TIG welding. TIG welding is an art form. MIG welding, arc welding, not so much. It requires some skill, but I was able to learn it no problem. I can TIG weld steel. TIG welding aluminum, however, is, in my opinion, very difficult. It's more of an art form. And for those who lay dimes, kudos to you, because it's a little bit difficult. So as far as Schluter Systems goes in doing the tile floor and the walls and the ceiling and everything, I learned to do it and did an expert job in it. I have a time lapse of all the work that I did, and eventually I'll get around to posting it. It has nothing to do with the channel, but I'll post it somewhere. It's got basically 6-7 months worth of footage of still time lapse, and I'm glad I did it because I made sure everything was perfect. A good friend of mine, Mike, he was having his bathroom done, and he paid somebody to come in and do his bathroom. And when I went in there and saw the work that this guy was doing, claiming he knew how to do Schluter Systems and the underlayment and the walls and the shower, I about pooped myself. It was all wrong, 100% wrong, and he paid a lot of money for that, and I hated to do it, and I told him I wasn't going to. He actually, like, when I walked in, he's like, no, stay away from the bathroom, and I forced my way to the bathroom. It's like, no way. So I broke out the Sharpie. I said, give me a Sharpie. I broke out the Sharpie and I started Xing just everything. Wrong, wrong, wrong. To be waterproof in a shower, it requires time, essentially, with Schluter Systems and most of the similar products. When you take a shower, the water hits the tile and it weeps into the grout and it gets behind the tile. 100%. Every shower does. What prevents it from getting further is time in between showers, where it dries and evaporates back out. So the correct application of these patches, when you put the Curdy board on the wall and you put the screws through the Curdy board and then you patch panel over the screw, you're required to have a 4x4 patch, round, square, triangle, whatever. It's got to be 4 inches from any direction to the screw hole to prevent water from getting to that. He was using little clip cuts that were like 1.5 and 2 inches covering the screw, and that 100% is wrong. And as soon as I saw that, I knew I made the right decision to do my own bathroom, because I've seen, I mean, everybody's seen the videos of people half-assing their work and claiming it to be good. So this latest project that I'm doing, which is necessitating this video, made me realize, well, number one, I'm freaking old. I'm 53. I'll be 54 in December. And made me realize that being older, I need to be able to, with artificial knees, both knees, I need to be able to do certain things with heavy equipment. Like when I move the log, what I would typically do is saw them in place 16 inches and use my log roller to get them in position or roll them over. And that, it's safe as long as you take your time and you don't get in a hurry, but there is a chance for injuring yourself, especially when you have artificial knees and your legs don't quite work like they used to. Now the pain and stiffness and swelling is gone from before their surgeries, but they just don't quite have the dynamic ability that a 20-year-old would have bouncing around in the wood yard. So I tried backing my tractor up with a backhoe and picking up logs and moving them out of the way, and it did not do too well picking them up. So I was like, that's not gonna work. And besides, anytime I want to do that, I'll have to install the backhoe, which means I have to take the rear hitch bar gear and all that stuff off, and I won't be able to use my back blade or my box blade or my grading scraper or any of my other implements while the backhoe's on, because it takes about an hour to take everything off and put the backhoe on, and vice versa. So while I was doing this latest project, which is installing a long needed French drain across my property, as well as installing a water line to the far southeast portion of my property where I typically would power wash things. So I would have to run a hose from the front of my house, west of my front door, all the way, which is about 110, 120 feet of hose. It's not worth pulling the hose out, power washing something, and then rolling the hose back up. So inevitably I would leave the hose out for the entire summer, and it would just be an eyesore. And what I want to do is make the house look nice, presentable for my wife, but it's hard to do when I don't have water in a specific location. So I ran a water line, and I'm installing a French drain because the amount of water that flows through my property from the field to the west of me is a lot. And you'll see in this coming video why I'm making this trip today. So using the backhoe in a straight line when you're driving away from it, digging and moving the dirt off to the left or the right, is ideal. But if you have to dig a perpendicular trench and you can't drive over the trench with the tractor, there's no way to do it. And I actually got stuck down by the pond, and my ass end started sliding down sideways because I was trying to dig. I backed up to perpendicular to the trench and was trying to continue it to the pond because I couldn't get to the pond. So I basically backed up perpendicular and swung the picker to the left to dig, and then tried to bring it out in front and to the right. And it just got to the point where the tractor was sliding even on the outriggers. So when I tried to pull away, the tractor started sliding, so I had to stop. I mean, I know better than to continue to force things. And when I stopped, I put the outriggers down and then put the picker out in the bucket and used the bucket, used the outriggers to lift the tractor, put the bucket down on firm ground, raised the outriggers, and then climbed into the tractor and started driving forward while reaching back and extending the bucket out so that it could push me out of the situation that I found myself in. And then when I went to go dig a perpendicular trench and start filling in a certain spot after I ran the lines and the French drain, there was just no way to get up close enough because the outriggers would push against the trench and collapse it. So a backhoe is good for a very, very limited amount of things. And I made the decision to get an excavator. So I'm gonna get a Kubota KX040-4 today. I'm on my way to get it right now. I'm getting a 36-inch trenching bucket, a 24-inch digging, and a 12-inch digging with the teeth for trenches. So once I determined that this isn't working with the backhoe and it's more trouble than it's worth, on top of the fact that I had to take the backhoe off the day before yesterday, and I had to put the box blade on so that I could move some dirt because I had 5 loads of dirt scheduled to come. And you can't do anything with the backhoe. You can't move dirt with the backhoe. You have to use a box blade to spread it after you get it out of the pile. So that took an hour to remove everything, and it just reinforced my, I don't want this backhoe anymore. So I'm gonna sell that thing. I've had it less than a year. I've only used it for two and a half, maybe 3 weeks, just digging a trench in my yard. So anybody that is looking for a BH92 backhoe, it's great for certain things. For digging holes, it's great. For trenching in different directions, it's not so great unless you plan it out a certain way. And I don't have that kind of time, especially with the fact that, you know, that's 10 grand tied up into something that I won't use as often. But I will 100% use the excavator a lot in the wood yard, moving wood around. And I'm gonna model my wood yard a little bit, probably like DIY Do Network, where they have their Easton made under a little shelter, fixed position, and that way I can bring the wood using the excavator or the grapple on the tractor to move the logs, and then just saw it right there, right from the picker. Indiana roads suck, and that way it'll free up my garage, get the Easton made out. And what I'm gonna do is probably take the wheels off of the Easton made and build using the pattern of the rim to make some type of stand to bolt on where the tire was, so that nobody can come in and just back up to it and steal it. Yeah, it's 19 grand I don't want walking off. We're really close to Indianapolis, and my road is a county road. However, it's called Shortcut Road because it is a shortcut between I-70 and US 40, and I get a lot of traffic there. So that being said, I don't want people driving by and getting accustomed to seeing, oh, there's a really nice log splitter there, let's go one night and steal it. Even though I have security cameras, that's only going to catch the evidence of them stealing it. It's not going to stop them from stealing it. So maybe some heavy duty 3/4 inch chain and chained around the beam, as well as the fact that it won't have any wheels on it, will allow them to come look at it, but they won't be able to steal it. So I'm pulling into Edwards right now, and I'm gonna go in and start doing paperwork.
Of course, we treat our intervals different when the unit is new than we do when it's later on in its life. I still like a 100-hour, it's not a major service, but the first initial service is at 100 hours.
Okay.
That includes engine oil and filter, which your drain plug is right on the bottom of this. It's exposed, so it's easy. Oil filter's right here. I'll apologize for the location of the oil fill right now. You will need a funnel. There's no way you can plug that in. Yeah. Dipsticks right here, of course. The same as the other. We do use a 15W40 good quality diesel grade engine oil. And like I said, that's at 100. The typical change after that becomes 200 or annually, whichever comes first.
Okay.
So I don't know how much you intend on using it, but you may find out that you're using it 400 or 500 hours a year, and you may be mid-season changing. But I like to see at least a 200. The book, I'm going to argue with there. The books nowadays are going 400 or 500 hours on engine oil. I'm still not a big fan of that. I think a lot of that's driven by EPA.
Okay.
But as I mentioned earlier,
You're saying you'd rather do it longer, or?
I would actually do it in that 200 range.
Okay, 200. Okay.
200 or annually, whichever comes first. Fuel system, you still have your 2 points of interest. This is a different fuel filter than what your other machines. Some of them are longer and some of them are shorter. Make sure that you get this from Kubota.
Yeah.
The aftermarkets are in trouble.
I've already got everything.
Yeah.
I got it from Sarah already.
Okay.
Just loaded it in my truck.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, there's current lawsuits on these fuel filters from aftermarkets. Only.
Yeah,
If you get in a pinch, make sure you get
I only use Kubota.
There's a red ring at the bottom.
Okay.
That only floats in water.
Okay.
So if you see water in there, of course, you're going to see that float up here about a half an inch tall or so. There is a white wing nut on the bottom side where you can drain this. If there's crud in there, dirt and so forth with that water, you can always shut your fuel off and, of course, spin this bottom cup off and clean it. Just pay attention to how that thing's assembled, because there's O-rings, springs that float. There's actually a light switch. There's a wire that turns on a indicator up front that tells you have water in your system. I like to pay attention to the float because these things, you can jar around a lot, and if you're doing that, even a half an inch of water can get jostled up to the top of that filter and get pulled in.
Okay.
This plugs up with water.
Okay.
And
is that the actual water filter?
That's actually the fuel filter.
Oh, filter.
This is actually called a water separator.
Okay.
It does have a strainer in there, but it's not really the filter. This is the filter.
Okay.
To bleed this system, there is a hose nipple here that you can just take to the ground. You can open up this, turn the key on, walk away for several minutes.
Okay.
And it'll bleed it out. But on this one, unlike a lot of them, you can actually see what's going on. You can put that in a drain bucket and you're going to see whether that's air or fuel. Once that turns to solid fuel, you're free free to attempt to start it.
Okay.
And it may cough and spit a little bit as it clears the air out of the rest of the fuel system, but it should clear fairly quickly. I don't know what you use for fuel. We use a premium off-road diesel. Is what we use.
I get it from the co-op.
Yeah, Co-Alliance. Diesel X4, I think, is their brand. Good stuff. It is. We use it exclusively. Antifreeze is right here. Keep an eye on that. Of course, it's right there right now. Keep an eye on that for the next couple of weeks, as you're going to be the first user to get in that seat and get it fully hot, fully cold, fully hot, fully cold. A few cycles of that, it may burp. And if it does, it's going to use out of this container.
Okay.
Anywhere between these lines, cold is okay. If you're filling it hot, of course, it has to have room to expand, and that's what this upper section is for. But between the lines, cold is fine. The cooling system, I call this the dry clean area. Everything here is clean with dry compressed air. We don't use water on this until after we've blown it clear of all the dust.
Okay.
Because what happens is dust settles in these fans of all the various coolers. And you've got an air conditioning, you've got a hydraulic, you've got a fuel cooler, and you've got the radiator. So you've got several different coolers there. And what you want to do is blow this out with dry compressed air completely. And it takes a little while. I'll be honest, it's not a 5-minute job.
Yeah, it's same as my 460.
Yeah, it takes
does.
a while.
It's to get to get it in that perfect spot to blow it where you can't reach it.
Yeah, and one of those long neck blowers that can sneak in behind here and without damaging the fins. It's pretty critical to have on one of these machines. But blow dry it or blow clean it first rather, and then of course if you want to use this in the rain or if you're going to wash the unit, feel free to do so. We just don't want to get the dust that's in here wet and then go cook it in at 200 degrees. It's called mudding in the radiator. Air filters right here, I'm a big believer in letting them do their thing. That's another 200-hour interval, typically. The only thing you can do in the meantime, this is a dust ejector, which basically has kind of fish lips on it. But you can squeeze that, tap that end cover, and you can knock the dust out of it. What they don't want you to do is removing this cover. They only want to do that once in a filter's life. That's it.
Okay.
So ignore the temptation to get in there and see what's going on. The manufacturer, Donaldson, the manufacturer of these air filters, they recommend only one cleaning per filter. And what they're more concerned about really is the seals that seal up that air filter. If you're routinely taking that filter in and out, in and out, in and out, I guarantee you those seals aren't sealing like they should be.
Yeah.
So because they get dusty as they come apart, and there's no way it's going to seal up. So that first initial cleaning, if you want to service it at 100 hours and see what it looks like, because your use may be different than others. Right now we're pretty wet. It's not real dusty. You could probably use it for 500 hours and get by with it. But come August, when everything dries out and we're getting dusty, and you're out there in kind of a dust bowl, it's going to change. So you kind of get a feel for how many hours is good for you, because everybody's use is a little bit different. Some guys are using compactors all day or hammers and creating dust all day long. Other guys are not. They're mowing wet ground or something, and they just, they don't have that. So I would go at a minimum of 200 hours or maximum of 200 hours, however you want to say it, and pop this cover off. Check the condition of the filter. You can be the judge then of whether you need to go longer or shorter.
Okay.
But I'd go at least that 200 hours before I open this up. And then mark the filter. If you're going to clean it then, blow it from the inside out with 30 PSI or less. Clean the case, clean this cover, clean the seals of the air filter, front and back, put everything back together, dating the filter or making a mark on it of some sort. That way the next time you take that cap off and you see marks on the filter, you pitch it and you put a new one in it. That guarantees the seals.
Okay.
The other thing we do at 100 hours is we drain and exchange that track motor oil. They come with petroleum-based, we believe it's petroleum-based oil. And I like the synthetic 7590. Lucas is what we use. There's other brands. You don't have to stick with Lucas. But I do like a synthetic oil in those gear cases. So we change it out in 100 hours for a couple of reasons. One is there's a break-in that's got a planetary gear drive in there, so we're getting that metal out. The other thing is, of course, we're putting in that synthetic, which will go up to 500 hours on intervals. I would do the first one at 100, do the next one at 400, and then I keep your intervals at that 500 interval. That way you know every 500 hours you're doing a major service on this machine, because that's when the hydraulics are addressed.
Okay.
And the hydraulics have a pilot filter. There's actually a return filter down inside this tank. There's one at the bottom called a suction filter. The suction filter is only done when the oil is exchanged. The oil really is good for 1,000 hours. So initially or later on, makes no difference, 1,000 hour intervals. 500 hours, we're replacing the return filter and we're addressing the pilot filter.
Okay.
Only, not the oil. It is AW46, all-weather 46, ISO 46. There's a lot of different names for it.
That's super UDT?
No, actually that's just hydraulic oil.
Oh.
A little cheaper.
Okay.
You don't need super. It's basically a hydraulic machine. That's all it does. So it doesn't have a transmission that it's running through or anything. That's the reason super is because it does both.
Okay.
But this is hydraulic machine, so it's good with ISO 46. There's ISO 32, 46, and 64. We're picking the middle weight because we get all weather in the end. So that's why 46 is often called all weather 46. It's good for year round. We don't end up changing it out due to seasonal changes. There's a valve up here, a 2 and a 1 way. It's right here. This is for your auxiliaries. It's basically for your main line, but you can change the action of that to a 1-way or a 2-way action. What that means in the 1-way is for a hammer. It shows even a picture of a hammer. Hammers, mulchers, there's some grinders out there, there's some other tools that are basically directional. They only have one feed.
Okay.
And the other is meant to be a complete return to tank. When you run a piece of equipment like that, it is set into the 1-way
Like
position.
the mulcher.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
And you're going to turn this sideways.
Okay.
Thumb, of course, you need both
Yeah.
ways. Grapple, you need both ways.
Okay.
So we're going to leave it in this position for that thumb.
For the 2-way.
Yeah, for the 2-way. Batteries up here, of course. There's even a spot for a grease gun here. It doesn't handle all the electric grease guns, but it does handle the old manuals. So track adjustments done the same way as our skid loaders. The plates right here. You can lift this machine up individually, left and right, and get the weight off the track by just swinging the boom and lifting this side up. And we're judging the distance between this roller and the track when the weight is off the bottom of the track.
Okay.
And it will sag down fairly soon because the rubber gets worn off of these sprockets and so forth and these teeth pretty quickly. And once, of course, that happens, when you'll start seeing the sag in the top a little bit. These tracks are pretty durable. You don't see a lot of movement in it, so it's not a bad idea to pop it over to the side and raise it up. That gap should be between 3/4 and 1 inch. The book will call for about a 1/2 inch, and I really hesitate telling people a 1/2 inch because they can be overstretched.
Yeah.
You'll never get it tighter than a 1/2 inch. That's the problem. You can bring it up to a 1/2, and then you think, well, I need to give it 4 or 5 more hits.
Talking about with the grease gun, right?
With a grease gun.
Okay.
And when you do that, all you're doing is over tensioning the
Okay.
track, and then you short-live your bearings and your rollers and that sort of thing. But to undue stress on the track, no need for that. If you set that gap about 3/4, you're not going to stretch it.
Do you have to run the tread before you?
There is on the factory track. Now, aftermarket tracks won't have that, but on this factory track, there is an infinity sign. It looks like a figure 8.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it. Some tracks have it, some tracks don't.
Right here.
There you go. That figure 8 should be round top. It's centered with this roller.
Okay.
They want it right there, and then that's where you check your gap.
Okay, so basically just doesn't matter. You don't have to roll a few times just to get it loosened up. You just put it at the top.
Put that figure 8 right over the top of this, and then check your gap right there.
Okay.
Now, on later tracks, you may not have that number. In fact, a lot of the aftermarket tracks we get do not have that.
How long do tracks typically last? How many hours?
That depends on how you use them. If you're if you're in hard surfaces all the time, like my utility customers, you know, they're always on pavement, they're always on cement, 1,000 hours.
Oh, okay.
If you're a farmer that's doing field tile and you're in dirt all day long and never really in anything else, you'll get over 2,000 hours out of them. You'll double the life.
How much they cost per?
These are expensive, but we very seldom sell the OEM. The aftermarkets are in that $1,100, $1,200 range a piece.
Okay.
That's what they are. And of course, there's your adjustment. They're telling you 0.4 to 0.6, which, like I said, is awfully tight. And that's in that half-inch range. I'm telling you to go 3/4 and you won't go wrong.
Okay.
You can't overtension. There's all kinds of grease fittings. Most of all your grease fittings can be attacked from this side. You've got 3 here. There's actually intervals listed up there.
Yeah.
That sticker. That sticker's a pretty good one to go by because it tells you all of them until you get familiar. But there's greasing points on the position 1 is every day. Every 50 hours is a swing bearing, which is number 2, and every 200 hours is a swing ball bearing, which is number 3. And that 1, 2, and 3 is right here.
Okay.
1, 2, and 3. Actually, it's the other way around. It's 1, 2, and 3. It's counting up. That's what it is. And they're labeled here. This one is the end of this cylinder. This is the cylinder end you can see. The other end is buried back in there, so they run this remote one back there. This is actually the gear teeth, and this is the swivel bearing.
Okay.
So, and that's what they're talking about, the different intervals. The rest of them are daily. Every time, 8 to 10 hours of use, you're hitting this, and you're greasing it. And of course, most of them are trapped in the center of the pin. This thumb adds a couple, of course. You've got one here, you got one down at the lower pin as well. And then of course you've got 2 extra on the thumb where it pivots here. One here and one down there.
Okay.
You have several in the center, but these are critical. These are in the dirt. They may be in the water. So hit them if you're digging in really wet ground and so forth. If you're digging all day there, every 4 hours, you probably ought to stop and grease it and squirt that water out and get the muck out of it.
That's what I did with the 92.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing. The rest of them, of course, are on this blade. There's actually a few extra because you do have a 6-way blade. You've got a few extra pivot points there. Not many on the machine itself, other than the digging portion. The only ones that are on the machine are these 2 right here, where the cabin swing is.
Okay.
That's it. These doors have locks. Any questions here before I close this?
Nope.
Okay, this is where you would add your oil if it was low, but right now we're good. That's lockable. There's a red handle here that lifts up. It's kind of a wind pin. Keeps that from bumping in the backside. And that shuts. You do have a regen system on this.
Like the 40-60, or is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's similar, except you do not have. Yeah, it'll turn solid. Good. Looking at the motor. I can turn that all down then. Updated and on. This one's automatic, so when it gets to the point where it needs to, it's going to beep at you and tell you that there's a little warning that comes on. The same warning mine has on it. It comes on and says exhaust temperature rise, which means, yeah, I'm gonna cook my muffler and clean it. And it goes through the process. Now, it will tell you to rev it up.
Okay.
If you don't rev it up, it will tell you to rev it up.
Okay.
So you do, I run mine 3/4 throttle minimum. Sometimes I just throw it all the way forward and run it. It's a 10 or 15 minute process. It's not very long. So if you just turn it up until that light goes out and you're done, perfect.
Like the 40-60, you can operate and everything while it's...
You can.
Okay.
You keep digging. There is, unlike your 40-60, there's no part regen on this.
What?
Well, on your 40-60, you have a part regen.
A part regen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, you may have not ever experienced that. It kind of depends on how you use the tractor. If you short trip your 40-60, start it up, drive it out of the barn, at morning, then start it up, drive it back into the barn at night, that sort of thing, you can actually use the machine to where it can't tell if it needs to regen because you're short tripping it. It has to get up to full operating temperature before it can even sense whether it needs to regen or not.
I don't do it that often. I keep, when I use it, I use it.
You use it, yeah. But if you ever get to the point where you did do that, it'll beep at you. It'll actually, a light will come on and it'll beep at you and start haunting you. And at that point, you do have to set it outside, lock the brake, bring the throttle all the way down to idle, and hit the park regen
This or the
button.
4060?
This is the 4060.
Okay.
This doesn't have it.
Okay.
But you have to hit that button on that dash that has the little eye on it, has the symbol with the eye on it. That turns it into the park mode. This one's automatic, just like your 4060, but it does not have a parked regen mode.
Okay.
It expects you to, whenever it goes into the regen mode, to just turn it up and keep on cooking and going. The secret to the regen, quite honestly, to the life of it, is not to interrupt it. So be careful that when you're going to shut this machine off, make sure that that regen symbol is off the dash.
Okay.
In other words, it's not regen. You don't want to shut it off midstream. The logic tells us that if we shut it off midstream, the next minute we turn it back on, it should continue that mode. But it won't, because it's sent those signals out to the muffler to determine whether it needs to do the regen or not. It's looking for a flow differential from front to rear on that muffler. If you turn it off in midstream and you come back and start it up, it's already clean for 5 or 10 minutes. It may not be necessary, and it'll go on and pollute that muffler some more until it cooks again. And what happens with those interruptions is the guys that clean these mufflers for a living, and they make a very decent living doing it, but the guys that do that, they'll tell you that they'd be out of business if everybody just allowed the machine to clean the muffler every time and not interrupt it.
My display is kept on the regen display.
Right.
I always keep it on, so I'm always watching it.
Right.
So I know that when I'm getting 90-95%, like I'm at 14% now.
Oh.
So
Pretty soon it'll.
Yeah, I just keep watching it.
Yeah.
So that's the display that I keep on the 4060.
Oh,
Is there a way to do that on this as well? Or?
I think so. I think you actually can through there. But on mine, I never paid attention to it. It just all of a sudden it'll beep at me, and I said, "Oh, okay, it's going through a regen." If I'm not at full throttle, I turn it up to full throttle, let it do its thing, and then go ahead. You might be able to monitor. I haven't paid attention to whether you can or not. I'll run through that screen here in a minute, and we'll find out. In fact, we can do that now. It's a pretty simple. It's going to welcome you, of course. And you just got a fuel and a temperature gauge right there. Let's see, hours and RPM. That's all you can flip through on that button.
Okay.
This is actually a setting or the system check. You can actually go down through. You got to pay attention to the arrows here. They correspond to the buttons right below them.
Okay.
So if right now highlighted is the log record. Here's the periodic check. Here's the clock set. So I'll have to check that here in a minute. Aux flow control set, various settings, language settings, and you're back to the log record. To enter into in one of those, you hit your enter button. This is your log record of how many times it's been operated in that time of day. So right now it says 0 hours because we haven't completed 1 hour of use yet today. And I don't know if the date's been set yet, so that may be the other thing. Yeah, I don't know. It may not. I'm going to go down here and set this clock and make sure it's... Yeah, that's wrong. 1:26 a.m. I don't think we're there, are we? Let's see. What is today? Is it the 27th, isn't it? Yeah. So it's ahead of day.
27th, 12:30.
Yeah, it's ahead of day. It said the 28th. And let's see.
I usually keep my radio time on the radio at summertime.
Yeah.
And the clock on the display on fall daylight savings time.
Oh. And you said 12. What was it? 30. Now our clock is set, 12:30 p.m. Okay. The periodic check. Engine oil. This is where you can do your service intervals and you can check them. Hydraulic oil, air cleaner element, fuel filter, and back to the engine oil and filter. Travel motor gear oil. That's your 80 or your 7590 synthetic down there. Return filter is the one we service at 500 hours. The suction filter is every 1,000. Pilot filter, they're calling it every 1,000. We normally do it with the return filter. We found that if you let it go to 100, or if you let it go to 1,000 rather, there are times when we've seen some slow motion on our sticks and so forth, and we like to do that at the 500-hour level. Idler track roller, they're saying 2,000 hours is your normal routine maintenance. A lot of guys just let them go until they go, but it's up to you there on how you want to do the machine. But they're saying 1 or 2,000 hours. Breather filter, that's on the engine. The EPA, of course, has put a filter on the breather system of the engine. It's a 500-hour interval. DPF, they're saying 3,000 hours. Again, a lot of people run them until they give them fits, and that's it. Clock set, you know. Auxiliary flow, you can actually change there's for your thumb, there's for your mulcher, there's for a swing grabber. There's an auger. I guess that's a pinch bucket, I'm not sure. There's your hammer setting. Hammer setting is one way, that's why they have only one arrow on the top side. Okay. So depending on what you've got on there, that's what you want to set it up for. Let's see. Let's go back up. I'm going to set it for there. There's your thumb setting right there. So I'm going to set your auxiliaries to work a thumb. Okay. Now, what that'll do, and that's 2, 3, 4, 5. You got 5 settings. So you
quick settings.
Okay. Quick settings is what you've got. Various settings. This is where I thought maybe your PM might be, but nope. Just gives you a calendar. And I think that's it. So I don't see a PM monitor. Yeah, I don't see anything where you can do that. I never did. Let's see.
What's PM stand for? Plan maintenance? Or?
No, PM is particulate matter.
Okay. Because I saw that. I see that on the left side of the display when I have that. Up there where it's at the bar.
That's particulate matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking, is that another?
It's the stuff that plugs your muffler.
Is that something that I need to do a PM?
Oh, I guess that would be confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not that. It's particulate matter. It's how much is trapped in that muffler. Set this down here. All the controls are pretty self-explanatory. Your air and heat, just like your 4060. There's no difference. Is yours a cab?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the same.
With age comes cage, bud.
Yeah, there you go. And of course, windshield washer and wiper button. You do have an eco mode, which will, if you're in low horsepower use, you can put it in the eco mode and you're going to save fuel. If you need full power, turn it off. Okay. You do have an inhibit for your DPF, and that's this back switch on the right side. That will turn off the regen system. You go into a state park with burn restrictions, you're in the grain elevator, you're in the hay barn, you're parked next to a petroleum station doing work or something, you may need to shut the system off because we are cooking a muffler at 1200 degrees and we're cooking soot out of it. There is a likely chance of a glowing ember flowing out of that muffler and causing a problem in those situations. You can actually turn it off. Keep in mind the default is always auto. So if you cycle the key when you're in the hay barn and you turn it off and you talk to Joe and then you turn it back on, you're going to have to reach back here and hit this button once more because it went back to auto when you did that because your default is auto. It's got a strobe light switch, but unless you put the strobe on the top of it, it's not going to do anything. But it's pre-wired and pre-switched for a strobe light for OSHA requirements. Headlights, of course, it's a 2-stage, I believe. You've got the keys off, but you got the one up front. Yeah. Well, I guess it's just one. Yeah. Just one switch.
Okay.
Yep. If you had the reverse, there's extra places back here for it. There is a stop button. There's inhibit, right below the inhibit switch, there is a stop button. And it's an emergency stop is what it is. But it's a red button. It won't prevent cranking, but it will prevent starting.
Okay.
So if you're in a situation, even in a work site, and the electrician over there is eyeballing your machine waiting for you to go to lunch so he can borrow it unannounced, it's not a bad idea because he may have the same key as you.
Okay.
It's not a bad idea to pull that little button out, and he may come in here and crank all he wants, but he's not going to be able to start the unit.
Okay.
Hopefully he gives up before the battery.
Kind of hidden, or?
It's not really hidden, but it's unnoticed. As you noticed, you had to have this up to start it.
Yeah.
Nothing's live until you bring this down.
Okay.
And of course, you got to bring it up to exit the machine. That's the whole principle of it. So it prevents that. The door is just like our skid steers and track loaders. You can actually raise it up.
Yeah, that's nice.
And you can lock it up. You can actually take this panel completely out. It's just sitting in there with gravity.
Okay.
It's just pinched in that rubber, so it's a loose piece of glass. But you can take it out as well, and you can open up our side windows, and you can have pretty much an open cab. I keep dropping your mic. Pretty much an open cab. As far as operation, everything is pretty simple. You do have a 2-pattern switch, which is right here.
Yeah, for the
pattern
SAE
A
and
pattern B.
Yep.
Myself, I like pattern A. This one's in the opposite, but it's whatever you're used to. If you've been operating your DH92 and you're used to that, you're probably going to want pattern A.
Okay.
So right now it's in pattern B, which is the excavator mode. The big excavators are different than tractor loader backhoes. Tractor loader backhoes, TLBs, are the A pattern. Excavators are the B pattern. But you can switch this running or not running. It doesn't matter. You can switch it and you can change the operation. But basically it changes the action of this stick, whether it's bringing in the dipper stick or whether it's lifting up the boom. One of the two. And so you can play around with those two and see which one is more familiar to you, which one you're more comfortable with, and you'll probably end up leaving it there for life.
Okay.
But it will change the action of these sticks. That's what it'll do.
As far as the thumb goes, you have to hit a button every time?
Auxiliary.
Okay.
Live first.
Okay.
This is live. And then, of course, you hit that button, and then you've got your thumb control right here.
Okay.
Horn. Let's see.
That's loud.
Yeah. You have a horn. You have a 2-speed over here for your travel mode. Just keep in mind it does not turn aggressively in the travel mode or in the 2-speed mode. You'll have to go to the first speed low to do any aggressive turning, especially in mud or something very restrictive to turning. This is your blade control, which you do have float.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing works though unless it's running and this becomes live.
Okay.
And this one has you have the tilt right here on top, and you actually have a twist on the handle that does your angle. Okay.
Angle this way.
Yep.
And then twist.
It angles left and right.
Okay, so the twist is this.
Yes, this is your twist. This is your 6-way, I guess you could say.
So
this is your 4-way.
Okay.
And this is your 2-way up and down.
Okay.
With a float. And the float actually locks in. To get it out of float, you just pull the lever back. But the float will allow it to follow the contour of the ground. That's what it will do.
Have you found that it wants to dig in when it's in float?
Yes.
Like-
Going forward.
Okay.
Going back, it'll
just drag.
just drag. But the curve of the blade, it's going to. Yeah. You'll have to control it going forward. Going back is when I use my float.
Okay.
These are hand, or you can actually pull the pedals out and you can drive it with your foot. You can do either way. This one over here is
Swing.
It's a swing for that swing cylinder, just for the boom. It's your boom swing. Over here is your cabin swing. Of course, so you can go 360 with this one. On this one, you're limited left and right. But if you're going to go next to a building and dig right up next to the building, you're going to use this. You're going to swing over to the side and then turn this all the way to one side, and then you can dig right up next to a building and crowd the foundation if you need to. It's pretty handy, actually. That's something you really can't do with your machine.
No.
And you can't get close enough.
No, I cannot. That's why I'm here today.
Yeah, you can't do that. Throttle is right here, of course. It's a dial from the rabbit to the turtle. But you also have an auto throttle, which is the button on that same panel there with the dial. But if you liven that up, of course, if you let something set for more than 3 seconds, it's going to go to idle. And then if you touch anything, it revs back up to wherever you have it set.
Okay.
So if you have it set 3/4 throttle or so and you're out digging and you pause to think for a bit or sneeze or whatever, it'll go to idle for you.
That's nice.
And then as soon as you hit any lever, it goes right back up to your working speed.
You don't get that kind of service on the 4060.
No.
You're either up there or you're not.
They're pretty cautious about the eco modes on these things. I mean, they really want them to be efficient.
And what was the button right behind the throttle again?
That is
forward. Yeah, that one.
That is the auto throttle.
Okay.
That can be turned on or off.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an option. You can use it or not use it. The back one is that eco mode. And of course, all your air conditioning ducts are behind you, and most of them are off right now, by the way. So turn them on. Lifting capacity, there's a chart up here, tells you how much and how close to the machine you're setting, how much it will pick up in those modes.
Okay.
For safety, basically. You'll find it'll pick up more than this. This is your suggested loads.
Is there a dump button for the, like if you're lifting something up and like on the loader of the 4060, if I'm going and I'm going around a corner and it comes like this, if for some reason it feels like it's going to tip, I can just boom forward
on an excavator.
Okay.
But of course, we're not traveling fast.
Okay.
These things are very slow. We're not traveling fast, and typically all your weight is pretty low. You always want to keep your weight low. But no, there's not a float. That's what this is for the front blade, but you're not lifting with your front blade.
Yeah.
You're lifting with your boom. So, no, that's...
How deep can the blade go? Below?
Oh, it'll go another 6 inches below.
Okay.
Yeah, you can pick the machine up with it.
Nice.
Any questions?
Nope. Seems pretty straightforward.
Okay, let me fill that up with windshield washer fluid.
So it's 1:15 on Saturday. I'm just now leaving Edwards. It was kind of a mixed blessing because when I got there, I realized that they had installed the bucket coupler and telematics and radio and everything into a 4-way excavator. instead of the 6-way that I wanted. And I knew they only had one 6-way on the lot. So when I went in, they could have swore they put it on the right one, but it was the wrong one. But anyway, the mixed blessing is that I was able to be there while they took the coupler off of the KX040 with the 4-way and put it on the 6-way, as well as I installed the radio and Larry installed the telematics. So it was pretty simple to do. It's just, you know, I like being there watching and helping work on it so that I know where things are. So the telematics is pretty simple to install, and I really do like to know where that's at in case there's ever any issue with it. I can uninstall it and reconfigure everything, if that's the way it works, hopefully, or hopefully not, depending on if I want to get stolen or not. But either way, I got it, it's loaded up, and I am on my way home with it, and I'm gonna tinker with it a little bit and see what kind of trouble I can get into besides the monthly payment.